Hello, and welcome to episode 209 of Retro Encounter. We're here today to talk about Grandia. And joining me today is Hilary and Andreff.
Hi, good to be here.
And we're going to talk about the first half of Grandia a little bit today and kind of talk about some of our initial impressions and some of our thoughts on sort of how it still holds up 20 years later. But first, how did you play Grandia this time, Hilary?
I actually broke out the original.
Oh, wow.
Because I thought it might be kind of fun to compare and contrast.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, yep, PlayStation 1.
And it still, ran well on your PlayStation 1?
Well, I actually have an early version PlayStation 3 that I was able to use.
And it still runs? That's amazing. Yeah, I thought those were all bricked by now.
Yeah, no.
That's amazing. I played the port. It's one of the reasons why I think that we're recording this episode now. And the port was sort of a mixed bag. I played it for review, actually, and some of the graphics were a little bit washed out at times. But the music was a lot better. But really, it's exactly the same game as the PS1 game, outside of the graphics being spruced up, depending on how you think about it. Most people, I don't think, are super positive on the graphics. I didn't mind them too much, but for me, I thought they were perfectly fine. And it was kind of nice to be able to play it on the go as well.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Grandia just sort of feels like a game where it would be nice to have it handheld just to be able to get that magic up or, run through a dungeon one more time quickly, because some of them are actually kind of short. Yeah,
mercifully short. We'll talk about the dungeon design later, but I'm guessing that you probably like it about as little as I do. But yeah, it's the grind is so addicting in this game. Just sort of getting those skills up so frequently and so easily. Being able to play it on the go and just pull it out for 15 minutes, just go move from a save point and grind up for 15 minutes was really useful and really fun. And I think that this game is such a sort of breezy, fun experience anyway, that it feels really at home on handheld, because it doesn't have sort of like that dark tone that a lot of games of the era did.
I remember actively thinking that most of the time I was playing, I bet this would be good on handheld, and that's a big plus in the ports column.
Yeah. That might be one of the only pluses in the ports column, but it worked out okay. The music was a lot better here, because I think that the PlayStation 1 had some kind of lowered sound quality from the Saturn version, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So it sounded great. Even in handheld, it sounded amazing. So before we sort of start talking about Grandia proper here, I'd like to talk a little bit about our experience with Grandia and sort of how we got started with it and how we originally played it. So, Hilary, how did you originally experience Grandia?
I didn't get too far, actually, in about the same time frame you were talking about earlier, so early 2000s-ish. And then I have a friend in Colorado who it's one of their favorite games. So we played it a little bit together about a little before the end of disc 1, maybe.
Okay.
I guess it doesn't really count as 2 playthroughs, but multiple experiences with it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That second time was on the Saturn.
Oh, wow. You played the Saturn version?
I did.
That's amazing. That's really cool.
That's why we did it. We were like, let's try the Saturn.
Does it look a lot better on the Saturn version?
It's a noticeable difference.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've seen images online about the water effects in particular being a lot different in the Saturn. Yep. And so that's always maybe one to experience it. And I heard with the port that they were using assets from the PS1 version and the Saturn version, but the graphics look so, shaded in, I guess is the way to say it, that I couldn't really tell how many of the assets they were pulling from each version.
That was a lot, yeah.
Yeah. Have you played any other Grandia games?
Yes, Grandia 2.
Okay. Which one do you prefer at this point? I'm curious.
Oh, geez. I like them both for different reasons. I think it depends what kind of mood I'm in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because my experience is sort of similar to yours. I except for I didn't play the Saturn version. I played Grandia pretty much when it came out. It came out in 2000 in the United States for the PlayStation. I remember it taking me months to get through, because it was sort of in that PlayStation 1 era of all the dark heroes, and I was in high school and I was 14 and I was very angry. I'm playing it. I'm like, Justin's too happy. This is the worst. By the time I got to the end, I was like, oh, okay, here's some story. And I kind of liked when it took a darker turn, which we'll talk about in the next podcast. But, coming back to it this time, it was really refreshing. It was almost like it was almost had a little bit of a spirit of Miyazaki to me in terms of it just being about adventure and innocence, and I liked it a lot. And it's funny because I played both of these games, both Grandia 1 and Grandia 2 for review, and when I was younger, Grandia 2 was one of my favorite games. I thought it was my favorite RPG, and this time I'm like, oh gosh, you guys are just complaining way too much. And Grandia, on the other hand, was so refreshing. So for me, it was... the combat system was amazing, back then and now. But for me, I really preferred the sort of the tone of it this time. So yeah,
interesting. So that's a little bit of a change.
Yeah. I mean, I think that as I've gotten a little bit softer as I've gotten older, thankfully for everyone, and maybe a little less angry. But yeah, so I think that before we start talking about the game in general, I think the development history is sort of interesting because RPG Fan actually has a little bit to do with Grandia coming over here to begin with.
Yes, definitely talk about that.
Which is really cool. So, and I didn't know about this. I sort of heard some rumblings about it, but so for those of you who don't know, Grandia was originally released in Japan for the Sega Saturn in 1997. And at the time, Game Arts, the developers behind Lunar, had said that they weren't going to port it over here. And so LunarNet, which was our name before we became RPG Fan back over 20 years ago, created a fan petition. And if you can go look at Wikipedia, and it's on there, a fan petition for them to bring it over here. And so once that petition came out and then they ported it to the PlayStation 1, then eventually Grandia came over here. And that was sort of toward the beginnings of our site. And that was one of the first sort of big things that our site did. So I think that's a cool connection to have to this series.
For sure. It's also kind of a nice reminder and a nice look back, just contrasting then and now in terms of what we do get over here and what we don't get. It's kind of nice to see the beginnings of a trend of the West kind of demanding more.
Right.
RPG, the interest increasing.
Yeah, back then there were so many games that we wanted to come over here, and now there are games that no one's asking for, like Moon, that are coming over. Now, Mother 3, still waiting on that. Yes. But other than that, I mean, I feel like almost everything comes over here nowadays, and that's a really nice change of pace.
Yeah.
So I guess let's talk a little bit about the beginning of the story and sort of our initial impressions and some of the things that we were thinking toward the beginning of the story. So what did you think of the beginning of Grandia?
So one of the things I'll start out by saying is I like Parm a lot.
I'm glad you do, because I'm not sure that I do.
I don't know. I think it's and I don't know if it's mostly nostalgia, but it's up there in my favorite RPG starting towns. And I think a lot of it has to do with the NPCs being so chatty and so many fun conversations. And, Justin's obviously kind of an integral part of this community, and I just really like that.
Yeah, and I think that the way it opens with, and I guess I should back up for a moment here and sort of explain what the premise of Grandia is. That's my mistake. So Grandia takes place in sort of this fantasy world. I'm not sure if we're ever given a name for the world at large, but it follows a kid named Justin who just sort of is living in this small town called Parm, as Hilary was just talking about, with his mom and his friend Sue. And his father was an adventurer, and his grandfather was an adventurer. And he wants to be an adventurer too. And so he, has this stone that he inherited from his father, and he, sort of wants to find out what's going on with it. So he takes it to a local archaeologist, and the archaeologist says, "Hey,
the town is a museum."
Yeah, yes, it is a museum. Yeah, and so he says, "I don't know what's going on with this stone." And then he takes it to local ruins because this historian tells him to go over and take a look at it. And in the process,
curator's like, why don't you find out? Go to the ruins and see what happens.
Yeah. And then when he goes to the ruins, he runs into this army who says they're excavating the ruins for philanthropic reasons. We'll discover later that that's not true. But then he meets a character named Liette, who tells him that he needs to go on an adventure to find Alent, which is sort of like this magical world that he sort of goes on for the rest of the story. And that's sort of the way the story goes. In the first part, there isn't a lot of major plot.
No, but there's a little bit more background, if you don't mind backing up a little bit.
Of course, go ahead.
So something that's cool and the reason that there's a museum and all this stuff is because the world, at least Justin's part of the world in Grandia, is really heavily influenced and heavily interested in this previous culture called the Angelou that were there and have left all these ruins. Nobody quite knows why they've left or what happened. And that's kind of Justin's big question he wants to find out with the stone. And that's kind of what he wants, like, the focus of his big adventure to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like it as a plot device early on because he doesn't really discover much about that until maybe the last third of the game.
Right.
But it gives him an excuse to sort of set off and just go, help people. And that's really what the first half of the game is. He's just helping people. He has a couple of run-ins with this army, but I love that the innocence of it is really charming, and the characters are so charming that it really worked for me.
I kind of like how they introduce him and Sue. She is an orphan. She's living with an aunt and uncle right next to Justin and Justin's mom, if I'm not mistaken. And she's his best buddy. They're always together. And the game starts with them finding some like magical artifacts that some rival kids have placed around the town, which I think is so cool. It's like a fake adventure before you go on a real one.
Yeah, and it's like a fun template for the rest of the game. Like, sort of the rest of the game is sort of like that. You're just like discovering items and just like doing things sort of for the fun of it. Like, it doesn't, like, the end of the world plot doesn't start until much later. And that innocence and that charm of that opening, I think, really plays into sort of a template for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
So I guess we could talk a little bit about Justin and Sue. I really like Justin. I think he's a great protagonist. He has great leadership qualities. He's so enthusiastic all the time. He's just so charming, and I can totally buy him as being someone who people would want to follow, even to go do this sort of silly adventure. And he's also, if you build him right, totally broken in combat, and amazing by the end of the game. There's like one skill you can use after the halfway point that if you just spam it over and over again, it builds up his levels so quickly that he becomes sort of a powerhouse by the end of this game. But he is, I think, really charming. And Sue, I actually don't find as annoying as I thought I would. She's sort of the kind of character who would normally really bother me. She's just like always on top of Justin and like always like, oh, I just want to be here. I want to go along with you. But she's really sweet and not all that useful in combat. But, she's really a pretty fun character, really loyal to Justin in ways that I think we'll talk about toward the end are surprising.
They're a good combination for the first half of the game because Justin is this great combination of super enthusiastic, but also makes mistakes, is a little bit of a troublemaker, which just kind of, I think you're right. I think it makes him kind of endearing and kind of, I think, points towards some of those leadership qualities because he'll, admit his mistakes and keep going. And Sue, she kind of keeps him in check at several points, which is funny. Like, she's definitely kind of a, like, I'm going to go along with your word team, but at the same time, like, she'll call him out on things occasionally, which is great.
Yeah, and he even tries to leave her behind, and I'm glad. And one of the things I like about this game is the way that it treats its female characters in general. I mean, I think there are some issues with it in terms of, like, Fina having to be saved a lot later on, but for the most part, I feel like the female characters in this game are really strong and sort of have their own individual personalities outside of it. I think Sue is a really good example of that she's the one who's sort of like pushing him along. And Justin's mom, who we haven't talked about yet, but we should, who is amazing too, and really tough, but also really kind to Justin at the same time and understands what it is he wants to do because when he's trying to leave, you can tell that she knows that he wants to leave to go on an adventure. And, she's really caring and loving, but also sort of tough in her own way. So she's really great too.
I insisted, like, I noticed that she was missing from our list of RPG moms, and I could not let that slide.
Yeah, she's one of the best RPG moms, and she makes such an impression because you only ever see her in that first town of Parm. But she makes such an impression over like the whole rest of the game because she's so distinctive. Yeah, so I think she's great.
She's definitely one of those moms that like knows what her kid needs for sure, and because she'll definitely like punish him when he needs it, but also she is at the same time caring. And oh my gosh, we'll get to this later, but the letter that she gives him at one point
It's so beautiful. Because there's an option to not open that letter, isn't there? And I can't imagine not having read that letter. I don't remember if you are able to choose an option not to open it or not. But like it's such an emotionally powerful moment in this game that I would be sad not to do it.
Yeah, I tried in the PS1 version to not open it, but then it wouldn't let me get past the choice. It went back to open it. Yeah, so I after trying a couple times to not open it, I opened it.
You're trying to be respectful of your mom and her wishes. Do not open this until later. I don't want to. Don't make me. So the thing about Grandia that I think sort of defines it for a lot of people, and that was sort of certainly my impression here, was the combat. Which before we kind of go into the rest of the story, I think it might be smart to talk about just how awesome the combat is. And so the way the combat works is there's 2 different bars. One that sort of has the actions for your party members and your characters, and then also for the enemy. And there are various ways that you can sort of speed up and slow down the 2 bars in terms of when enemies get to take actions and when you get to take actions. And the game does a nice job early on of sort of giving you training wheels with it. There aren't a ton of skills that you have to use to manipulate that bar to be able to be successful until we get to that squid. We'll talk about that squid. Oh my God. I think that it is really cool in its simplicity, but also really surprisingly deep, and it keeps everything sort of fast moving and fun.
Yeah, you can breeze through it, but you can also really tweak it.
Yeah, and the other thing that's sort of related to that is the skills progression, which I think is also pretty cool in this game. So basically the way it works in this game is the more you use a particular type of magic or a particular type of weapon, the more you're likely to level that up. And you can level your weapons up and level your magic up, and the more you level those things up, the more powerful they become. But it also impacts your stats as well. So like if you level up your axe, it causes your strength to go up 2 points, for example. And if you level up your magic and your skills, then you unlock new skills. And then when you use those skills, you're able to sort of continue to build points up. And it makes grinding in this game really addicting, too.
Yeah, and combining different types of magic does different things.
Yeah, and I really thought that it was a super effective system. And I haven't played a Grandia game in almost 20 years. And as I'm playing it, I'm like, this feels so modern still. It feels really fresh.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly parts of this game that don't feel fresh to me, and we'll talk about that. But I think that the combat is the one thing that absolutely 100% felt great the way throughout. And it played fair, too. And they make some fun tweaks to it in Grandia 2. I know this isn't a Grandia 2 podcast, but to sort of change, how much canceling is important, but canceling enemy attacks is really important here as well.
Yep.
The one thing I didn't like, though, was the mana eggs, which the only way you can unlock different elemental spells is by finding a mana egg, and then you go to a shop, and then you can unlock. Now you have the access to wind spells, or you have access to fire spells, or you have access to water spells. And the thing is, and this gets into the dungeon design, which we'll talk about more later, it's really hard to find things sometimes in this game, and I always felt like if I was missing out on finding a mana egg, that I wasn't going to have all the skills available to me or all the spells available to me, and it was really frustrating. And the other frustrating part is if you lose a character, if you've put a lot of mana eggs into them, then it almost feels like a waste. You can get some experience from them, but it's only a third of their experience. And so I wish the game had done a better job of sort of telling you about that.
It would have been nice to have a little bit more warning. I mean, and it's funny because I thought about that exactly at the time when you were first able to use mana eggs and got access to them, because I kind of had an idea, who might be leaving. And so it became this stressful question of, okay, then what do I do with them?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I knew that one of the characters was going to leave early on because I remembered from my first playthrough, but then I didn't put any mana eggs into her, and you have her for the whole first half of the game, and then she was just useless in battle for me because of that, because she's not very strong. Sue's not very strong in battle, so yeah, I thought that was a little bit frustrating personally.
It was. I used one. When we talk about later on, I'll talk about it more. I'm glad I did, just for no other reason than some of the cute, watching them cast some of the skills were fun.
Yeah. No, I like the spell animations in this game too. They're not too long or lengthy. Again, another problem that a lot of PS1 games had was lengthy spell and summon animations. And I think that they're pretty snappy here.
Yeah, But they found a way to individualize them. Like the characters do very different things.
Yeah, and they all have their own individualized dialogue too, which again. But yeah, so in speaking of frustration, and again, we'll talk about this a little bit more later. But I think that you said you like Parm, and I didn't like Parm, and the reason for that is because I got lost in Parm over and over and over and over again. I mean, I could not find. They were told me like go to some person's house. I'm like, where is this person's house? I can't find it. And there's like this bridge in the middle of town. And can I cross it? Can I not cross it? And there's no mini maps in this game. And it's a little bit annoying in Parm, but it's way more annoying in Dungeons because oh my goodness, the dungeon design in this game. It is so frustrating for me. Because like they have like these little spots where you can sort of see an overview of the dungeon, but it's usually not all that helpful. I'm like, are you teasing me? Like, are you playing around with me? Are you trying to show me that this is how it's set up? But it didn't help me.
The very fact that you need to include those lookout points maybe indicates you might want to rethink how you can see around and like navigate the dungeons. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, even the Salt Ruins, which is the very first dungeon you go through in this game, I'm finding myself like falling down like bridges, and there are a lot of traps in the dungeons here too. It seems like it is designed to frustrate you. If it had a mini map, it would have been okay. And in fairness to Game Arts and the designers, they gave you an arrow, like sort of on a compass to show you where to walk, but it's really not that helpful because you don't know how to get to that spot you're walking to a lot of the time. It actually was helpful when I got turned around sometimes. Like, did I just walk into this screen or out of this screen? That was the only time it really was useful for me. But other than that, it did not do much for me.
Agreed. Oh boy.
Yeah. But, I felt like actually the dungeon design got better as it went, or maybe I just got more used to it. I don't know. Did you feel that way?
I was asking myself that same question. I'm kind of leaning toward I got a little more used to it. At least I was expecting those traps a little bit more by the time we got to, like the Misty Forest and the end of the world.
Yeah, because the end of the world is just, and again, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but it's just this sort of walking up this wall. And even there, I found a way to get turned around with some regularity. Like I'm literally just walking up steps for screen after screen after screen, and I still can't figure out where I'm going. And I couldn't tell if I was just being impatient because I was playing it for review and I needed to get it done or what, but it drove me a little crazy.
Yeah, I definitely had those points in the dungeons.
Yeah.
Where I was just like, okay, I've been wandering for too long. It helped in terms of character leveling, though.
Yeah. You get lost so often that you never really have to grind. And that's another thing about the way the dungeons are designed in this game and the way that enemy encounters work is that you can see the enemies on the screen. So it's modern in that way. Not a lot of games were doing that back then. A couple of SNES games did, like Lufia 2 and Chrono Trigger, but not a lot of PlayStation games were doing it yet. And so it seems cool, like, I can see enemies and I can avoid them, but they're all much faster than you. They're everywhere, and they jump out at you all the time. Right. So I found myself getting ambushed even when I thought I knew where the enemy was.
Right,
and I was just getting jumped at.
Sorry. And it all depends on the camera, too. There were a few times where, just because of the way I had the camera, there was no possible way to see an enemy, and they ambushed me.
Yeah, and I think that might have again been on purpose, but it sort of defeats the purpose of what I thought they were trying to do, which was allow you to avoid encounters. But I felt like I had more fights than I do in a lot of, I don't know, Super Nintendo games that have random encounters. It was just like constant, and it was okay because the combat's awesome. But eventually, it's like, okay, I really want to get through here, and I try to run away from an enemy, and they catch up to me, and like every time, like, oh my gosh. So it drove me a little crazy, but so all the dungeon design stuff here didn't really work for me in terms of, and the gear you get there is sometimes like really, really good, but it's really hard to find too because I just couldn't figure out where I was going a lot of the time. I actually found most of the good gear when I got lost, and the mana eggs when I got lost.
Exploration.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just old. I don't know. I just don't have the patience for it anymore. I'm not sure.
I think this might be a good time to bring up the trend of, becoming a slightly busier adult with responsibilities and maybe wanting to be able to explore and get lost and find stuff, but not really having the patience for it.
Yeah. I think that I don't remember having even that impression at all when I played it as a kid. I don't remember thinking anything of the dungeons. It was just like, oh, they're dungeons. But now I go back to it, and I've been, so many ports this year that I've been playing a lot of older games, and even compared to other older PlayStation 1 games or Super Nintendo games, the dungeons are so complicated. So yeah, I mean, I think those are some of the basics of the game in general. So I guess we can get into talking about the plot a little bit here. So, like you said, we open in Parm, and we sort of talked a little bit about those story beats. But one thing I think we forgot to mention, that when we get the Spirit Stone, and then we go off to the Salt Ruins, we meet sort of all the antagonists from the game. Actually, they all show up in that first dungeon. And actually, isn't the very first scene of the game with General Ball? Isn't that
yes,
true?
It is.
I can't remember what happens in that sequence.
It's all a bit cryptic, and I think it's kind of meant to be a bit a hook, honestly, because it's Ball talking to Mullen, and I think Len comes in at the end, and it's, is everything going according to plan? Okay, good, kind of thing. All right, well, let's keep investigating the ruins. Len needs to go with you, kind of scene.
Okay.
So you know that they're headed there, but you don't really know who they are or why yet.
Yeah. And it was never clear to me, even like, and I think I figured this out while I was writing the review for it, that they're just sort of an independent army. I sort of thought that they were like the Empire at some point, maybe because I've just played too many RPGs. But it's just like correct me if I'm wrong, but General Ball and his army are just sort of a group of people who are sort of the military for their own sake, like a private army.
Yeah, that's really what it seems like. I haven't. We're halfway through the game, and I don't remember them being associated with a certain place, which is odd.
Yeah, I think I sort of found that. I mean, it didn't even occur to me that they were just a private army, because I'm just like, the Empire is evil. I know that because I've played RPGs. So you are evil, therefore you must be the Empire. Yeah, I was surprised by that. But yeah, so when we get to the Salt Ruins, we meet Colonel Mullen and Lean, who are two. So Colonel Mullen is the son of General Ball in this army, and he's sort of like this popular blonde guy who's really charming, and everybody who sort of answers to him seems to be completely in love with. Even though I got to tell you, the voice acting in this game is charming in its own way, I suppose. But the guy who voiced Colonel Mullen, I thought was really, really over the top.
Yep.
Of all of them, that was the one that I can't handle this. I almost turned the Japanese voices on this time, but then I was like, no, it's Grandia. I feel like the bad voice acting is part of the experience. But with Mullen, I still couldn't handle it. But yeah, we meet Mullen, we meet Lean, and then we meet like three, I think they're lieutenants or captains, Saki, Nana, and Mio. Are they lieutenants, captains?
Are they also lieutenants? They're officers.
Yeah, they're officers of some sort, and I can't really distinguish between the three of them. Do they have distinct personalities?
Yeah, they sort of have different approaches to leading their troops, and they compete with each other.
Okay.
So I'm gonna get this wrong. I think Saki is the one who's more focused on like physical strength.
That sounds right. Yes, I'm picturing it correctly. She has the blue hair, right?
And then Mio's the green hair, right?
Yes.
Yeah. She's more focused on tactics, and she's the one that does all the annoying status effects later on.
Oh yeah, she's the one you always want to take out first. It was one of the only hard battles in this game. That's part 2, but fighting the three of them at once was really tough. I thought later. I think I party wiped on it a couple of times.
Yeah. Oh, so to back up a little bit, Justin breaks a priceless statue on his way to get to figure out what happens.
It's like this statue that the guy had been working on for months, and he breaks it, and he's like, "Oh well, gotta run."
Oops. You can kind of choose based on how much you talk to the curator, like whether you admit that you broke it or not. I think, but anyway, that happens. You go to the ruins with a pass from the curator, and the three of them, the three officers, they tear it up. They're like, that doesn't mean anything here. Go away, kids.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at least they make like a strong first impression. I feel like all the villains here, except for maybe Ball, who we see very little of in this first half.
He seems like he doesn't care.
Right. They're all pretty well defined, and I think that they're all likable in their own way, which I think sort of fits with the spirit of the game. I mean, Lean, who is sort of the second in command to Mullen, is, she has an interaction with Justin later where she gives him back the Spirit Stone when she tries to steal it from him, and we're getting ahead of ourselves here. But I think that the way the villains are presented here sort of fits the overall tone of it. And I'm glad that Ball is sort of pushed off to the side for most of the game, because I think that the interactions with the villains were one of the real highlights of this game for me.
Yeah, I think it's a good choice.
But yeah, at the end of the Salt Ruins, we meet Liat, right? Isn't that where we meet her? And then she tells us about Angelou and then how we need to pursue it. And then on our way out, we start getting chased by Colonel Mullins, because he's upset that you managed to find your way into these ruins, and he's not sure why or how you managed to find your way into these ruins. Yeah,
there's an inner sanctum area where you meet Liat. She is able to transmit to you and talk to you, and it works because of Justin's Spirit Stone, and Mullen and the Darling forces couldn't get in there, so he's like, how'd you do that? And tries to chase you, and Justin and Sue coordinate and trap him on a rotating platform.
Oh yeah, that was an awesome sequence. Yeah. And they're sort of stuck out there, and I always remember wondering, how do they ever get out of there? Right? That's the real question. That they're stuck on, it's this rotating room, right? And they're stuck on an individualized rock where there's just enough room for the two of them. Yeah. I'm like, man, that's you're just gonna leave him there? But yeah, I love that afterwards Mullen starts saying he's really good humored about it. He's like, oh, yes. that kid, I like him. He trapped me in a dungeon and left me to die, but I like that kid. I just think it's really funny. That scamp. But yeah, after that's when Justin gets back, and he makes the decision that he's going to, he needs to go to the New World, because one of the things that Liat tells him is that he needs to fly off and go to the New World. And one of the things that's great about this game is there's always these new worlds to explore. You start out in one spot, and then you cross an ocean, and then you cross a wall, and then you cross another ocean. It's always this brand new experience. And I think that that's one of the reasons this game works so well. But yeah, you're always setting off for this new thing. And so yeah, he sets off on a trip, and this is where his mom knows that he's leaving, but doesn't really want to say anything to him. So she gives him this really beautiful, sweet letter, sort of encouraging him to follow his dreams. I actually think it's one of my favorite moments in the whole game. It's so good.
Okay, so to back up a little bit, it's kind of interesting the way they have adventuring set up in the world of Grandia, because there's one person on Justin and Sue's continent who was an adventurer and has an old adventurer's pass, which Justin needs to cross the ocean.
Okay, and you find out later that he's this legendary adventurer who's done all these amazing things, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That's exciting, but Justin has to get the pass, and then the letter that his mom writes is addressed to the president of the Adventurers Society, which is on this second continent that you go to. And it's encouraging Justin and saying he has potential, but at the same time, she's also kind of saying, look out for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a really sweet moment. And then once you get on the boat, you're basically told that you have to work to stay your way there, because Sue... what is Sue? Oh, because Sue is stowed away because Justin tries to leave her. Sue is stowed away.
That's a very important thing. Yeah. Justin has his first, adventurer's conflict, knowing that the famous adventurer tells him got to make tough decisions, and adventuring basically is kind of a solo occupation, and you have to protect other people. So he's conflicted, and he makes the decision to leave Sue behind and set off without her. And he tells her this, and she's pretty devastated and runs home and tells Justin she hates him, but then she stows away.
Yeah, Justin's kind of a jerk about it. I think that, and again, I like that Justin, when he makes a mistake, and especially trying to leave the woman behind and sort of that trope. And it's not just that she comes along, it's that she comes along and she's forceful about it, and she stands up for herself in a way, and she's not and I love that I think there's some indication that she might have a crush on Justin, maybe. But it's never played up, and it's not. He certainly is not just surrounded by all these women who are in love with him. He's surrounded by women who are self-assured and know what they want. And I think Sue is a really great sort of first step. She's younger, but she's tough, and a lot of some of the most useful characters in this game in battle are women, and it's one of my favorite things about the presentation of this game.
Definitely agreed. Yeah, her feelings about Justin are kind of left up in the air.
Yeah.
she's meant to be a little bit younger, and at least looking at it this time, I definitely got more of the like strong friendship,
Mm-hmm.
possibly even almost sibling like.
Yeah. And I think that even me thinking that she might have a thing for him plays into that sort of that RPG trope, that like, if a woman is traveling with some dude, that she's got to have a thing for him. And it might be part of where that came from, but I don't think it plays into that at all. The game doesn't. And I think that's to its credit. But yeah, when you're on the ship, they catch Sue as a stowaway, and they try to throw you overboard, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, they do because something about the ocean spirits and how it'll curse the voyage, and
Yeah.
stowaways are bad. But if they're training sailors, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. So then they become training sailors, and you have to do this mini game over and over again where you're cleaning the deck, which actually I thought was kind of fun. Actually, I actually enjoyed that mini game.
it took me so long to get the hang of it the first time, but this time I got it faster.
Yeah. And then we meet Fina, right? Doesn't Fina show
Yeah.
up? Yeah.
She shows up on the boat.
And I have to say, I really love Fina. I love the way she plays in battle. I love her character design. I love the green hair. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that she is totally self-assured, but also has like moments of vulnerability. I mean, she's my favorite character in this game. I think she's phenomenal. And I think that she ends up playing a great sort of foil and partner to Justin as you go throughout the rest of the game.
It's interesting because he's, kind of this upstart. He wants to be an adventurer, but I guess kind of is in an area of the world where he doesn't really have access and is just starting out and all this.
Mm-hmm.
Fina, on the other hand, before you even meet her, the first thing you find out about her is, New Palm's #1 adventurer is going to be onboarding tomorrow, and it turns out it's Fina.
Right. Yeah, and they do a great job of setting her up, and just like who she is, and sort of making her like sort of like an almost like a figure that is someone to look up to from the beginning.
Yep.
And they do a really nice job, I think, of developing the relationship between Justin and Fina sort of slowly. Like Justin clearly admires her. Fina admires Justin's sort of like desire for adventure, and she sort of sees that as being something that she's lacking. And I think that the thing that makes this whole game work is the character interactions, and I think that in particular the interactions between Fina and Justin are just really, really well done.
Fina, Justin, and Sue, I would say. They're a fun group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're a great group, and they're fun to travel around with, too. I wish Sue was a little bit better in battle, but...
Which actually, allow me to backtrack for a second. So one of the cool mechanics about the game that we haven't quite explained is as they're traveling through all these things, occasionally you'll either go to an inn or someone's house or in a dungeon. Sometimes someone will say, this is a good spot to rest. And you'll get these little like camping scenes or dinner scenes where you get a lot of that character interaction. And it's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the localization here is phenomenal too. I mean, I think it's really, really clean, but also it doesn't fall into any sort of tropes as well. And those dinner scenes are a treat because of it. Like they could be really tired. Like I always want to click through them. I don't want to. I'm tired of reading all this dialogue. I find myself doing that a lot as an older person. Just like get me to the action. But here, it's so really well developed that I found myself enjoying those moments when they sat down. They didn't feel repetitive to me either.
One good example of this is getting ahead of myself a little bit. So maybe I'll save it until a little later on in the plot. But there's a big event that happens that probably affects Fina pretty well, but you actually don't see her talking about it very much unless you ask her about it in that dinner scene a little bit. You kind of see her getting like distracted by it, and that's when Sue and Justin kind of try to reassure her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's realistic to who they are too. And I think that, and there are a lot of those you could miss too, because you can, a lot of times at the end, you're given the option to do it. And even I was in a rush to play this game, and I would even find myself saying like, yeah, I do want to eat that dinner. I do want to see that dialogue. I do want to talk to those NPCs as well, because the NPCs here are all great too.
Yeah.
I mean, they say different things based on different events. It feels a little like like Trails in the Sky, Trails of Cold Steel to me in terms of the way that NPCs will change in terms of what they say to you, and it's all unique and it's funny and they're all real people.
Especially for the time. Yeah, I mean, it changes based on how many times you talk to them. Sometimes it changes depending on whether you've done certain events or not.
I thought it was great. But while we're on that boat trip, that's when I can't remember, are we hit by like a ghost ship? Is this the idea that, so we're hit by a ghost ship, and then we have to go onto that ghost ship to then go free the people on the ship. And that's when we fight at the end of that dungeon. I thought the dungeon itself wasn't too bad, but then the boss, that's like, it turns out maybe the hardest boss in the whole game.
It turns out the ghost ship is being driven by a giant squid monster.
Yeah. Did you have as much trouble with that boss as I did?
I surprisingly didn't. And I'm not sure if that's just because I really emphasized everybody's speed and movement and just got in there quickly and kept doing my actions.
Hitting him over and over again. Yeah. I don't think that I had really gotten the hang of the system yet, maybe to the fullest extent. And I was just kind of like focusing on trying to do as much damage as possible and not stopping the actions, because there are so many different. I think the squid has like 4 different parts, and I felt like I was just getting hit really hard by all of them constantly.
Yeah, he's one of those bosses that has the tentacles in the body, and
and I don't think I was using Fina's spells effectively yet either. So I don't know. I remember struggling with that boss quite a bit. But after that, we're sort of recognized as full ship members, and we don't have to do work on the ship anymore because we've saved the ship. And then we arrive in New Parm, right?
Yes.
Where we try to join the Adventurer Society.
And that goes badly. The president that Justin's mom knew is no longer the president. It's his son who's in charge and has basically changed the Adventurer Society and made it into a really kind of a bureau of tourism. There are different tours you can go on. There's an NPC who complains about the indigenous giant snake tour.
Yeah, I forgot about that. It was good.
Probably not a good one. He's just sort of capitalized things and changed them. And I think if you are a card-carrying member of the Adventurers Society, you can't go to the ruins or actually discover things about this mysterious ancient civilization. Yeah, it's really interesting. And he's pretty obsessed with Fina.
Yes. Weirdly obsessed with Fina, yeah. And he kidnaps her and tries to marry her, right?
Yep. Justin and Sue bust in and stop that. And you get your first, kind of cheesy, kind of fun scene with Justin and Fina because they bust out of the church. Because they sneak in, so they come out of the front of the church, and the townspeople are like, "Yay! Here's the happy couple." Oh, wait, yay! We like to celebrate things, so I guess we're still celebrating. But you're not the president guy. Yeah,
it's hard for me to imagine such a creep becoming the president of an adventurer society. I feel like he must come from money or something. He's got to have bought his way into that position because he is the worst.
Yeah,
he's the one, maybe the one besides Ball, the only truly evil character in this whole game. And he's just so difficult to sort of buy as a person who's running an adventure society who just wants to sort of control people. But I like that it leads to the scene with Justin and Fina in the church.
Yep. It's interesting the way they set that up because there are some NPCs and definitely the guy's secretary who are yay, he's done good things for the Adventuring Society. Really? Has he? And he has, in a moment of interesting and cool localization, he has a specific way of talking.
Oh, yeah.
And you see one of the NPCs emulate it. Yeah. And why? This is not something to aspire to.
Yeah, it's another really great moment of the localization here. It's funny, I don't know who did the localization for this game, but it's really a stellar one for PS1.
Yep.
I think that Working Designs had talked about doing it, but it's funny because I wouldn't have wanted Working Designs to do it. They would have filled it with too many pop culture references that don't work today. This game works much better today because Working Designs didn't localize it, I think.
I think I agree.
So after New Parm, you actually end up going back to Fina's house, right? And you spend a little bit of time there with her, and you guys start discussing sort of what the adventure is going to look like and sort of where you need to go next, if I remember correctly, right?
Yep, which is another set of ruins, so you can get more information on how to eventually get to Elend.
Yeah. And so then you go into the Dom Ruins, which I have to say, I know I complained about Parm and the Salt Ruins as well, but the Dom Ruins might be my least favorite dungeon in this whole game. Because there's this weird mechanic where you're going up and down all these different like lifts and things like that, and like you're also like walking out and like trying to create bridges. And I got myself turned around in there a lot. And there's also the ability to fall down cliffs, which is I think is put there to make it faster to get back out. But what ended up happening was I went the wrong way, and then like I put myself back at the beginning of this dungeon like 3 times.
and that is part of it at one point, because you drop back down to get to a save point because you need to go back near the beginning to continue.
Yeah.
You have to backtrack a little bit, but oh man, I mean, just the combination of the cliff face and those lifts, it's so easy to get turned around and not go the right direction.
Yeah. But, you know, when we get to the end, we see Liette again, and she tells us that we need to cross the end of the world. And we haven't talked too much about what the end of the world is at this point, but everybody sort of on this side of the end of the world that we're in right now sort of thinks that the world ends at this giant wall that no one has ever scaled before on sort of like the edge of their world. And so the impression is that it's impossible to get over that wall. And even Fina, who's like this great adventurer, is like, oh yeah, that's the end of the world. And that's just sort of the end of the conversation. But Liette says, hey, there's more on the other side of this wall. And if you want to get to Angelo, you need to... or get to Lent and learn about the Angelo civilization, you need to cross this wall. And of course, Justin, being who he is like, yeah, let's do that. I know it's like never been done, but we got this.
Yeah, and that was actually kind of something he even back in Parm, he talked a little bit about the end of the world and was interested, and he never thought it was the actual end of the world. He always kind of thought there was something on the other side of it. And actually, interesting little cool thing about the ghost ship is there was a round globe there. I forgot to mention that. And Fina mentions it. I was like, oh, it must be one of those antiquated globes when they thought the world was round and there wasn't an end of the world.
I didn't even catch that.
Yeah. But anyway, so Justin's always been kind of a believer, so he wants to go to the end of the world and see what's on the other side.
Yeah. I mean, and I love the way he addresses it. And I love just, again, his optimism there. And again, that spirit of adventure that he has is like infectious, even for me as like a cynical 34-year-old RPG game player. And I was like excited to get there. And I think that they did a great job with that there. But yeah, in order to get to the end of the world, you have to go through an area called the Herb Mountains and the Misty Forest as well, which presents its own set of problems because it's surrounded by a forest that has a bunch of fog in it.
People say that adventurers don't even come back from, never mind the end of the world, they don't come back from the forest around it.
Right. And so you end up going to these mountains, and there's a character, and I cannot remember the character's name.
Ren? Are you thinking of Ren?
Yeah, Ren, who is being chased by the Garlisle forces again, and you try to save him, and he gets captured. And so you take a little detour to go save him.
Yeah, they hurt him. You take him back to Fina's house. That's why you go to the Herb Mountains to treat his wounds. And then they end up roughing up everyone and taking them prisoner because they want it seems like the military wants this humanoid, they call him. He has a tail and he speaks a different language, which they handle pretty well. It's kind of cool. They have him speak in like little symbols until something happens where you can understand each other.
Oh yeah, that's a cool mechanic. Yeah, I like that a lot. But you're captured in the process.
Yep.
As well, and you're taken back to the Garlisle base, which you're sort of you're put in these prison cells, and you're being questioned about the Spirit Stone and why are you trying to help this humanoid out? And the Garlisle forces seem to think that you have sort of the same goals that they do, not really understanding that that's not really what you're going for. You just want to go do something fun. And something sort of strange happens. Lean, who is, again, the second in command to Mullen, helps you out. She helps you get out of there. And that's your first sort of hint that something is a little bit strange maybe about Lean.
Yep. She leaves you the key.
Mm-hmm. So she leaves you the key, and then you go through that base. And I actually thought that the random encounters in the base were pretty tough. The soldiers, I thought, were a little bit tough to take down. Because the random encounters here are actually Garlilian. Or is it Garlilian? Yep. I don't know. The soldiers, we'll just say that, are sort of tough to take down, I thought. But yeah, eventually you get to the end and you save... I'm still not remembering his name. Rem. You save Rem, and then you get that mechanic that allows you to speak to him because he hands you the nut, right? Doesn't he hand you the nut that allows you to understand what he's saying at that point?
Yeah, there's a communication nut. Yep, after you save him, and then you bust out, and of course the three officers, Nagasaki and Mio, are there. You have to take them down individually to escape, and then you make your way to the train.
Yeah, and I love the way that they sort of are running along this train as they're trying to escape, and as they get to the end, they're cornered, and Justin just breaks the brake off. I'm like, I wonder if it's actually that easy to break off a brake line in a train. I feel like that's kind of dangerous.
It feels like there's an emergency brake system. But yeah, no, he's trying to break the train at one point, breaks it, but then kind of uses that to his advantage, lures the three up in the air, and like locks them in there without a brake. So keep going, and Justin, Fina, and Sue don't.
Yeah, and so then Rem, because you tell Rem what it is you want to do once you manage to escape, and Rem takes you back to his Luke village, and you have to travel through the misty forest, that forest that's surrounding the end of the world. And when you're there, the Garlisle alien forces invade again, and they steal the statue that they have.
Yeah, you learn that they are looking for pieces of something, and they think one of them is the Luke villagers' God of Light statue. Justin tries to save it, winning the respect of all the villagers there, even though he saves about half of it because Lean's trying to physically take it away with a crane, and Justin hops on. That was a really cool moment for me. This village elder, usually you're expecting, like, our God of Light is destroyed. Like, what are we going to do? But this villager's like, there's half of it still. You fought for us. And we're happy with what we have, so thank you. And everyone's so grateful.
I wish every village elder was that chill. I mean, and that's also where you find out a really important piece of information about Fina, right?
Yes, that is the point, because you see, it's the first time with the three of them seeing Lean. Fina recognizes her as her sister.
And she seems shocked by, how is it that you came to go work for the Garlisle forces? And Lean just says, it's something I had to do. And I feel like the sort of the relationship between Fina and Lean, and I've played the whole game at this point, is never really fully explored. Like, what were they like as children? How are they separated in the way that they were? Why did they not know what the other person was doing? I think that's really strange. And there are some things that we'll get into in part 2 that may explain it. But even then, neither of them were aware of those things at the time. And so I'm not sure sort of how it is that they came to be so separate, because it seems like they're pretty close in their own way when they talk to each other, and they really care about each other, and they have like a pretty good relationship for people who don't talk very often. But like, I'm like, why?
Right. And I remember it being kind of up in the air, like even after playing more a long, long, long time ago, I had questions.
So then after that, the village elder, because he's so chill, even though literally the statue that he worships is broken in two, he gives you a nut that allows you to clear the mists in the forest, so that you can approach the end of the world. And man, I love that moment when you first approach the end of the world, and like that little FMV sequence where you're just looking up at it. And in the port, there's this weird thing where they'll like blur out the sides of it because they keep it in widescreen. But even then, even with like this weird FMV thing, like it's just such an epic moment. And the music that always plays over those FMVs, and I love the music in this. We haven't talked about the music, but I think Ida Ware does an amazing job capturing the spirit of adventure here. Man, that is such an effective moment. Just looking at that wall.
Yeah, definitely.
But then you have to actually scale that wall, and that dungeon is really long. And I like that they made it so long, because it really, like, I got tired. Like, you have to camp out 3 or 4 times on your way up that wall. And I thought it did a great job of showing us like just how much of a difficult task this would be. Now, granted, these are like 3 children. If these 3 children can do it, I don't know how no one else has, but still, it still captures that scale really well, I thought.
It does. It's a good kind of marker and a good obstacle, I would say. And it's like, I was counting screens, and it was significantly bigger, more areas than a lot of previous places. But the other cool thing about it is vertical. And I kind of thought, there's still some bad stuff about the dungeon design, but I thought that this particular dungeon was one of the points in the game where the perspective and some of the kind of wonky things about the way the dungeons look actually worked more in the game's favor, or at least it was less annoying.
Oh yeah, it was much better. And there are a couple of like weird puzzle sequences in that dungeon where like you have to press buttons at certain points, and those confused me a little bit, but I still felt like they were playing fair. In a lot of dungeons in this game, I don't really feel like play fair. And we haven't really talked about it, but the dungeons a lot of times will actually have like field effects where like there will be things that can damage you, and so there are like flowers that might attack you or other things like that. But here, I remember there being like this like sequence of metal cranes. Am I remembering this correctly? That like attack you, like come down and like smack you over and over again.
Yeah, you can get smacked by metal cranes.
Yeah. And it's like right before the boss too, I think. And I think I forgot to hit recover before I hit the boss. And I was like, oh, I should have hit recover. But I did remember to save at least. But
metal cranes. There's fall damage because some of the staircases and blocks disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And there are, of course, the blocks that will come out and push you and hit you. There are a lot of different ones in this dungeon.
Yeah, I thought that given the fact that it's so long and it's so not varied in terms of the way it looks, I was just so relieved, first of all, that it was that straightforward. And I just loved, like, it felt big. But I also loved that the field effects were used and played fair there. And I felt like I actually think it might be the most effective dungeon in the whole game, which is saying something given that you're literally just running up a wall.
Yeah. I think they did really well with it.
But my favorite part of the end of the world is once you reach the top, there are these like flying helicopter things. Are they like flying helicopter things that come and grab you, and then they just drop you off the side of the wall? I'm like, how do you survive that fall? Like you fall into trees, I think.
Sue gets separated from Fina and Justin because she gets grabbed first, and it's tense.
Yeah,
you're looking at her through the first section of the Dragon Valley.
Yeah, and then when you land, you're in the Lost World. You're in the other side. And it turns out all the people on this side of the world also think that that's the end of the world and nothing is on the other side, too, which I think is also really cool.
Yeah, I like a comment that Fina made, because that's how she describes how I felt about this area a lot. She's like, oh, it's their version of the misty forest.
Yeah.
It's really dangerous and annoying. I'm like, you know what? You're right.
Really difficult to navigate. Lots of dead ends with like these little like pittances of like 10 coins at the ends of the dead ends.
Yes. Like, why did I spend all that time getting this?
It was not worth it. But in the Valley of the Flying Dragon, we meet one of the most powerful characters in battle in the whole game, Gadwin, who I remember the first time I played this game, he was definitely my favorite. I always have like a thing for like sword wielders and like melee attackers, and he sort of challenges you to a duel. He's just this like adventurer dude who's just like kind of sitting there and hanging out, and you get into a duel with him because don't you think that he kidnapped someone? Because you can't find Sue when you fall off, right? Yeah.
That was a funny scene, and it's worth mentioning. So you find Sue's shoes as you're making your way through the valley. And then you find Puffy, who's really agitated. Mm-hmm. And we went this whole time without mentioning Puffy.
Oh my gosh. Puffy. Puffy's great.
Yes. Puffy is Sue's pet, who I think they don't really explicitly say this very clearly, but I think Puffy, Justin's dad actually found Puffy.
Oh, I don't remember that. Did they mention that at some point? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I think I read it somewhere, actually. And so Puffy grew up with Sue and is basically Sue's pet and is just a really cute little winged puffball who can attack and do all sorts of things and contributes to conversations with NPCs, too. Mostly just saying things like, puff, puff, puff. But it's really cute. And normally Puffy sits on Sue's head like a bow. It kind of looks like a bow. So Sue and Puffy are separated. Puffy's very agitated. And then you go into this little camp of someone's and you see this boiling pot of stew. And Fina faints. Justin freaks out because they think Sue is the stew, which of course she's not. And you find out that it is Gadwin and this doctor lady, Alma, from the next village that you go to, who found Sue and helped her out. But Gadwin sees you as an adventurer and, challenges you at that point.
Yeah. And then, when you get challenged by him, I think you lose that battle, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, you lose that battle.
9 damage to you.
Yeah, and he pulls out that dragon cut skill
Yeah.
and just like wipes the floor with you. But I really like Gadwin. I think he's a great character. He sort of functions for this next little bit of the narrative as a mentor to Justin, and he is strong and he's tough, but he also is really caring about his village, and he cares a lot about Justin. And man, he wrecks things in battle. Whew. Using that dragon cut thing, which eventually Justin learns later as a skill, and that's the skill you can abuse that will really, really raise his stats up quickly. It just serves, I think, as a great guide into this sort of beginning of the new space. Like every time you enter a new world in this first half, you have this new guide. So you travel the ocean, here's Fina. You cross the wall, here's Gadwin. And I think that's a really smart on the developer's part, because it allows them to give you a little bit of info dump without it feeling like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I love Gadwin. I'm sad that you don't get to keep him for longer. But luckily, that's after this part.
Higher level than you, so he makes the last part of that valley much nicer.
Yeah, because the first part of that valley, you're only rolling with 2 people. And then you have 4 after that, and it's much easier. And it actually ends up being like a solid spot to like grind up some skills, too. But then after that, he takes you back to his village. Dite Village is what it's called.
Yes.
And he runs off and he starts talking to the elder, and he seems upset about something. And then he says, okay, everything will be fine as long as it doesn't start raining. And then it starts raining.
It rains.
And it turns out that they're afraid that there is like this, the spirits are cursing them. And I don't remember, is there a reason why he thinks spirits are cursing them?
You don't find out much about it at first. You just find out that you have to get to the tower at the top of these mountains before the rain reaches a certain point, because the rain's eventually going to become poisonous and really hurt everyone. And you are not at first exactly sure why. So you head immediately. You don't waste any time.
Yeah. So you head off for the Typhoon Tower. And I don't really have like any strong memories of this dungeon. I'm guessing it must not have been too bad. Was this dungeon too bad?
No, it really wasn't. It was kind of colorful. I enjoyed it.
Oh, okay.
There were a lot of staircases, like a lot of kind of gaps in the floors where you had to go up different staircases at different points, but it wasn't too bad.
Oh, is this the one that had the basement and it had like multiple like colored stairs that you had to go through, and you had to move platforms? Okay, I got lost here too, but of course I did. I got lost in every dungeon in this game. But at the top of this tower, you have to make a choice, right? About a mirror to go through. And if you go through one mirror, I believe you die. And then the other mirror, you'll save Dite Village. And I love this moment. I think that because Fina ends up being the one who tries to make the decision for who needs to go through it. And then Gadwin's like, no, I'll do it. And Justin's like, no, I'll do it. And then Fina steps up, and she's strong, and she makes a decision about what it is they need to do. Ultimately, Justin's the one who has to go through it, but I love that moment.
It's the Room of Destiny, by the way, is what it's called.
It's called the Room of Destiny.
I knew it had a fun name.
That is a dope name. I like it. That's sweet. I like that a lot. And I love that whole moment. And, eventually Justin goes in to the mirror. And I can't remember exactly what happens within the mirror there.
So there are the 2 mirrors, and it's kind of clear why you needed a group to stop the rain and get this Spear of Heroes, actually.
Okay. The Spirit of Heroes, yeah.
No, remember. Because there are 2 mirrors, and the spear is behind one, and the other is death. So if someone chooses wrong, you need someone else. And Gadwin tries to volunteer, but he's too big to go to one of the mirrors.
Yes. Yeah, and then Justin tries to do it, and then he's like so upset about which one he chooses, and then Fina says, "No, I'll pick for you." And I like the way that it develops their dynamic. And who each character is. But then you escape, and the place starts crumbling while Justin is in the mirror, so Gadwin and Fina have to escape. Fina doesn't want to leave. She won't leave. Gadwin says, no, Justin will want you to leave, which again starts to develop that romance. Because at this point, there has not been any real romance mentioned about Fina and Justin, but you're starting to get it a little bit, those feelings. And I think that's a nice moment to show how much she cares. And then they escape, and then Justin is found at the bottom of the mountain, if I remember correctly.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And so then at that point, you've sort of saved the day.
Yeah, I think it's explained with this, like, because he has the spirit stone.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how he gets.
And that's the way that he is sort of transported
collapsed.
out of that mirror. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So once you get back to Dite Village, you discover that there are, yet again, in this part of the world, another set of ruins that you need to go explore, to go find out more about the Angelou civilization and who they are. Gadwin says he's going to go with you. And so at that point, you guys set off. And and I think that's going to be about where we stop for today. In terms of where we are with the story, we'll pick up there sort of at the Twin Towers next time, and then move through the rest of the game. So I was just curious, Hilary, what are sort of your thoughts on the first half of the game so far? You enjoying it, liking it more or less, as much as you remember?
I think I'm pleasantly surprised by the combat, and I'm going to enjoy the rest of the game playing with that system. So that was better than I remembered. Somehow, I think I have more of an appreciation for it, having played other games, different games.
I think as I've gotten older, I care way more about combat than I used to. I think that used to me, like, it used to just be a means to an end. Like, I want a good story and good characters, and the combat is whatever. But nowadays, I find myself caring way more about the combat than almost anything else, actually. So yeah, that for me, I agree.
Yeah. I was so entertained by Sue. I really have to admit it. Her skills, I don't know, and some of the things she says when she can. Well, no, because you said you didn't.
I didn't give her any mana eggs, which I think by the time I got toward the end of this half, because I remembered, and again we're not there yet, but there's an event in part 2 that made me not want to give her a mana egg. And by the time I was getting to this point, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've had Sue for like 20 hours. Like, why didn't I give her any magic? Because she doesn't hit that hard.
Right, exactly. So I gave her 1. I gave her Earth, and there's just something about her when you finally get an offensive Earth spell. As she's casting it, she yells, "Earthquakes are scary!"
Oh man, I'm sad I missed that now. Because I gave her a mana egg, I was going to give her water skills, but now if I play this game again, I am definitely giving her earth skills.
Yeah, I wanted to buff, I think at the point where I was when I gave it to her, I wanted to be able to buff defense, which is the first thing you can do with earth. So, yeah, no, I don't know. And her special skills, I mean, one of them, I've got to mention them. One of them, the first one you get is the Puffy kick, where she just hurls Puffy at an enemy, and he just attacks. And it's I don't get tired of watching it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the first heal you have for a ridiculous amount of
the cheerleader one, right? I love that one. It's so fun.
It's called Rara, and it's Sue and Puffy getting out some pom-poms and going, "Okay, here we go, Puffy, puff, puff. Here we go, let's go, woo!" And it's just so silly and so cute.
I don't think we've talked a lot about the voice acting. I know we talked about Mullen's voice acting, but were there any voice actors that really stood out to you as being particularly good?
I would say that for most of them, especially the heroes, like, I appreciate their tone and their enthusiasm because they definitely nail that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're all believable, but it is
very 90s anime.
Over the top. Yeah.
It is so 90s anime. I mean, and the sound quality is a little bit low on them too, which is always, like, you can hear like a little bit of a buzz in the background as through the recording. Even in the port, you could hear it. But it's funny because in the port, you can switch over to Japanese, and the voice actors are much better, and the voice quality is much cleaner. But I just couldn't do it. And there's something sort of vaguely charming about the voice acting. I don't even mind how bad it is. Like, I feel like I'm watching like a cartoon because of it. It makes me feel like I'm sort of sitting there as a 12-year-old just watching like some really cheesy anime in the 90s that I love. And for me, that really makes it work. And that's just like nostalgia speaking. From like a pure quality perspective, I think the voice acting is just bad. But I love it anyway, and I don't care.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I felt. And I mean, especially with the PS1 version, I did notice, like, it was a little bit kind of grainy, a little bit difficult to hear.
It's just as grainy in the port, which, I mean, kind of goes along with the port not really doing a whole lot to upgrade much of anything. But yeah, it didn't sound great there either. Okay, well, if we're actually saying nice things about the voice acting in Grandia, I think it's probably about time for us to wrap up. So next week we have a sports-related RPG episode. It involves Final Fantasy, and that is all that Solosi will allow me to tell you. And next month we're going to have 2 episodes about Vagrant Story, which is a game I've never played before, so I'm really curious to listen to that. But I've heard it's really hard, so I don't think I'm going to be able to hop on those episodes. So if you'd like to email us, you can email us at retro@rpgfan.com. You can also comment on the message boards if you still want to, I guess. Maybe don't do that. You can visit our Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, Discord. We have a Twitch stream almost every day. You can also listen to our 2 other awesome podcasts, Random Encounter, which mostly covers current events, and Rhythm Encounter, which is significantly less current because we haven't had one of those in a while, and it is all about music. Also, we love getting feedback, so if you would like to review us on iTunes, Google Play, any podcast listening venue, we really love feedback. You can also follow RPG Fan on Twitter, social media, and all those different spots. So, Hilary, if listeners would like to get a hold of you, how should they do so?
The 2 best ways to get a hold of me, on Discord, I'm EPFire, and you can also use my RPG Fan email, which is hilary@rpgfan.com.
And if you'd like to get a hold of me, you can email me at zachw@rpgfan.com, and you can also find me on Discord at zachw. All right, well, thanks for talking with me about Grandia, Hilary. I know it's a longer game than people remember, and I appreciate you playing this with me. I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to more of the adventure, and yeah, apologies if I was fuzzy at any point. I played because, just for reference, I've been moving and doing a lot of stuff recently, so I kind of had to play in spurts, so my memory was not as good as I would like.
Yeah, same here. I played it a couple of months ago and pretty quickly too, but I think we got it. But anyway, listeners, thank you, good night, and good luck.